Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, and with me today are some fabulous guests. Welcome to the show, Rox Burkey and Charles Breakfield. Welcome back.
Hello, Tim. How are you?
Hi, Tim.
I'm doing pretty well. I am fresh from the trenches of writing words this morning. I started at 6 o'clock. Very happy about that. I'm trying to start a new habit there, so I'm really excited. Because I'm a day job and I have to just go in. That starts at 7:30 really. So I just like up and go right. That's what I'm trying to do right now. So it worked today.
I love that habit. I love that habit. As soon as you wake up, you start writing. You get all those dreams down before you get cluttered with everybody else.
Well, I mean, with me, I actually go through a little ritual where I drink like a ton of medication.
Oh.
Well, I mean, I drink down a bunch of pills that have been prescribed. It's all fine, but I do that because I have ADHD, and it's really hard for me to focus until I get my ADHD stimulant.
Oh, okay.
And then
cool.
I drink coffee, and then I start writing. I get coffee, and I start writing as I drink it, and that's that's the ritual now. Is what it's going to become.
I love that. Yeah. Everybody needs a habit. I love good habits. Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first day, so we're christening it today. This is the good habit day. Yes. Maybe Thank you. I'm here all year round, actually. No, anyway. So you two are co-authors. I've had Charles on before, but remind people a little bit about the stuff you write and the kind of books you're into, I guess.
Well, we're into almost everything. So I actually write reviews for lots of different author books. It's one of the things I do on my blog. I like everything but horror. I'm not big on horror. I don't like being scared out of my wits. But I do lots of blogs for reviewing books. And we write now as of, a month ago?
Mm-hmm.
We write in like 5 genres. We're so excited.
Fantastic. Wonderful. I still only write in like 2, but my last guest, Clay McLeod Chapman, suggested I try horror, which is kind of funny. I try writing horror because I was similar to you, Rox, when I was younger, and when I was really, I'm still not that old, but I mean, when I was like in my 20s, I'm like, I still don't want to watch horror movies. I don't want to be scared, and then I just developed a taste for it over the years. So now I'm into it. So, I mean, not saying there's anything wrong with not being into it, but there you go. I mean, now horror is like my 3rd favorite genre, which is kind of wild. And I never liked it before. Yeah.
Well, and we did sort of a pivotal turn ourselves. We were doing thrillers, mm-hmm. and then this group invited us in to write cozy mysteries with them in the Magnolia Bluff Crime Chronicles, which was kind of fun. And then Roxanne indulged me on the hey, let's try a woman's contemporary short story, which was like, I thought, okay. And then I surprised her and say, how about a children's book? Let's try this, and a science fiction, and we're off the Richter scale on let's try this, let's see what they're all fun. They're fun exercises because you're not okay. I'm going to do the same old thing. Don't you get bored with the same thing? I mean
doesn't everyone, right? I mean, I it's funny because I used to think I was kind of the same way, but now I'm like, I have a comfortable zone of science fiction and fantasy where I usually hang out, and I like to change not so much the story as the setting, like the world that I'm writing in is the thing I like to change the most, which is the biggest challenge for me because most people want to stick to a world and learn about it for more than one book in my genre anyway. In the genres I write in, and I think it's pretty normal for genres for like people they want to see this universe develop. They want to have time with the characters, more stuff to learn about everything. And I'm like, you wrote one book in that universe. Let's start a new universe.
And I think fantasy is fascinating. If you are good at writing fantasy and creating the world building and carrying it forward, I mean, you're a master if you can do that. I love reading that. I'm not so good at doing that.
Yeah, writing it is challenging. I mean, it's basically my main event for the last 20 years has been writing sci-fi and fantasy. So that's kind of the difficult. I mean, since I was 14, right? So this is pretty easy. I finished my.
Wow.
It's almost 21 years since my first novel got rough drafted, because that was like January when I was 14 or 15. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool, but and I got to say, I really do enjoy a good world almost more than a book, right? More than I enjoy reading a story, I enjoy a good setting, a good universe of fantasy or science fiction, because I'm one of those pretentious people who I've come to identify with more traditionally published authors, especially the ones that are a little more on the fringe as far as what they actually consider to be normal, I guess, to read. But a lot of people who are in my immediate author vicinity are the kind of people who think sci-fi and fantasy are basically one genre, which obviously isn't true when you're selling books to people. But it is true if you're writing in a very abstract sense. It's semi-true. And so it's on the borderline of not being true at all. Let me put it that way.
From your perspective, how does that relate to dystopian?
Dystopian could be sci-fi or fantasy. I mean, I write a lot of dystopian fantasy, right? At least I have in the past, right? A lot of my fantasy is very dark and dystopian, so it's not a genre people identify. Like, it's not a category that you can sell on Amazon. Dystopian fantasy, it's almost all associated. Dystopian is its own category on Amazon, but
it is exactly right.
Yeah, it's a whole other can of worms. What actually goes in each book, right? The categories on Amazon are just the simple way of saying it, right? And or they're simplified because they're what people kind of expect to see, I think, or what readers want to see.
That's fair.
Yeah, I agree.
And I consider myself to be kind of originally I wrote kind of on the edge of sci-fi and fantasy, right? So my first book is a book I might be coming back someday soon. The first book I wrote when I was 14, right? It might actually be getting published, self-published, indie published after a really harsh round of edits starting next year. But it was about giants in space. So it was like based on Norse mythology, where a dead giant made up the body of the world.
Yep.
And then I was like, what if the giant was just sleeping? A sleeping giant. And what if that was inside every planet that humans could live on? There was a monster waiting to be born, waiting to wake up again. And then it's a space opera about giants, about trying to do something about these giants that live inside the hospitable planets of the galaxy. That's weird.
Exciting.
It's pretty weird, but I mean, and the funny thing is, it's a recurring theme of mine. Going back to space, to giants in space, is like something I always come back to every now and then. And it took me a while. It took me this long to realize that it is kind of something I've always wanted to do, and I've continued to want to do it for many years.
We would encourage that. I mean, keep pushing.
Yeah.
Keep pushing that envelope. Push yourself for that arena, because that's some of the newest material we've had where it's like follow your dreams. It's that's something that's if it's important to you, if it's something that don't let it languish, I guess is the best way to put it.
And it's entertainment. So writing, it's an entertainment venue.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have to necessarily fit perfectly for everybody? No. I mean, what's wrong with standing a square on one corner?
Right now Nothing. It's a diamond, but it's the same shape. It's just a little different. It's displayed differently. Yeah. Fantastic. I love that. And I actually do have a question for you, though, because when you say follow your dreams and stuff, obviously you are two people, not one person. So how does that work when you're collaborating? Because I know when I write, just as a preface, when I've written books, like I can look back and say, this is what I was going through when I was writing that book. And my own life is very directly mirrored or reflected in some ways in the book, right, that I created during that time. So how does that work as a co-author team?
Well, I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, we've explained this a couple of times, and we've kind of refined the discussion. But basically, we collaborate. We talk about here's the process. It starts off with here's an idea, and with enough polishing, we make it a concept. That's actually a Woody Allen gag. But anyway, we'll build 10 to 20 chapters, kind of rough out. Okay, we say this, say that. All right, and then we'll take a chapter. One of us will do that, and then come up with the idea, the story thread, and then bat it over to the other one, and back and forth until it's polished. Mm-hmm. So the storyline's polished, the characters are polished, and then the story starts to tell us this is what has to happen next.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting way to be able to write, because it's like, what do you think? All right, your turn. What do you think?
Well, and what's interesting for us as co-authors is, right now we're together in the same room talking to you. That is probably 2% of our time. We're actually in the same locale. So we do all of this remotely with one another for the most part.
Oh, that's cool. I do like remote work. Collaboration, I think I've explained this many times on the show before. Not exactly my cup of tea, right? I mean, it's just different structure, different folks, but I'm very kind of grabby when it comes to my stories. I'm like, I want to do it myself. Maybe because I also am a big gamer, and when I do games, like role-playing games, tabletop games, when I do tabletop games, I like to run those, but that's the collaboration side. And then I have enough of that, and I want to go write my own thing.
I understand. But realize that in this newest book that we released, The Dreamer, The Dream, you can go faster by yourself.
Yeah.
You can go farther with a team.
Oh, interesting.
And
that's really powerful statement there.
That's what she and I have learned over the years of collaboration and writing. We can go farther together.
Yeah, that's pretty beautiful, really. Yeah. So definitely whatever works, right? That's the other thing I got to say. Whatever gets you the farthest, right? You just do what works. That's how I've learned to treat my writing too, in general, or anything in life. Like if it's not doing the thing it's supposed to do, then it really has to change. If it is doing what it's supposed to do, keep doing it, right?
Correct. Yeah. And maybe there's not a right or a wrong, but there's an evolution to it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I've tried outlining heavily. I've tried outlining a little. I've tried not outlining at all. I think I felt outlining a little is where I start, for example.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we are too. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
No, we kind of know the end point. In our thrillers, we know the technology we want to leverage, but we don't necessarily know the end point. In our cozy mysteries, we know the end point, but not necessarily all the steps to get there yet, because it kind of talks to us.
Yeah.
It's a very characters are noisy.
They can be, for sure. The scene I wrote today was a lot like that. Sorry, what was that, Charles?
Oh, no, tell me about that. Tell me about the scene you wrote today.
Okay, so the scene I wrote today, I was wrapping up the second arc of this big epic fantasy that's set in kind of an ancient Egyptian meets feudal Japan setting. So it's a very weird combination of cultures that I've melded together a little bit. And I realized, and this is another good example where I discovered a large portion of the story, because originally this book had a really intense hook of based on a line from that I always misheard in Iron Maiden's "The Rime of the Ancient Mariner" for many years, which is the line is "Around his neck the dead bird is hung," because it's a retelling of what was his name again, the poet, "The Rime of the Ancient Mariner" by whatever, some poet from England who was really good, but I forget his name right now. But the line was "Around his neck the dead bird is hung," and I always heard "Around his neck the dead girl is hung" for several years, and that really sank into my brain, and I eventually put that into this story as the opening sequence, right? And as this character is shamed, and he's forced to walk into the desert to die, but then things change, right? It changes a lot. Samuel Taylor Coleridge is the poet.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I almost said Coleridge.
Yeah, it was Coleridge. I forgot, but it came back to me. My English major skills have returned, but that was the hook. But then I found myself wandering off into the second part of the book, which is this part of the book where I'm like, okay, now I have to figure out where we're going to go with these characters that have the girl who's not as dead as we thought, the guy who was who was sentenced to carry her to his doom in the desert, and various other characters, because it's an epic fantasy. It's kind of got a large cast. But then I thought, well, I need something bigger. And then I realized, what if there's a star, it was getting, as the year crept on, I was like, what if there was a star people are looking to follow, like a star in the sky, like the one in the New Testament, in the Christmas story. And I'm like, okay, sure, let's do that. But of course, it can't be a nice creature that is being born in my story. So it's something, it's a reverse Christmas is kind of what I'm looking at here, a reverse nativity story, where something not so nice is being born instead. And I thought that was kind of cool. So that's that's the scene I was wrapping up today, was the reverse nativity. Yeah.
Okay, I got a question for you, Tim.
Sure.
You bring up a good point. Big cast. We have this debate on a regular basis. That's too many. We got too many characters. Narrow it down. And you said, I need, and I pull characters in. I need a prop to be able to do this. Yeah. And it's like, that's too many characters because we need to have the backstory for them. And what is a big character universe for you?
That's a good question, because it does vary. I mean, I think it depends on the depth I put into each character. Because some of my earlier novels, like the one I wrote, Orphan Mage. I have too many books that start with O. Orphan Mage, which I wrote when I was 19, mostly, and then revised, and I released it a couple of years ago, is the biggest cast I think I've ever done. And it is 100,000 words long or so. So it's a nice meaty fantasy novel, but it's pretty small by the standards of the book I'm writing right now. And it has maybe 50, 60 names in it that are important and all very strange, because that setting I was just really diving into making fantasy names. I'd finally gotten good at it after 5 or 6 years of trying. And so, back then. And so I was like, okay, we're going to make a lot of these fantasy names, and they're going to be weird and outlandish. And then there's lists of characters that may not even really appear in the book, but are a bunch of names that people might want to, that are like, that we have a basic idea of who they are. But there's maybe 10 to 50, there's 20 or 30 characters that matter in that book, I think. And this new book has maybe 15. I consider that a pretty good sized cast now of like important characters.
Well, we had that criticism leveled at us on our book number 7 in the Gamers, and they said,
which you would love based on your gaming. Yeah. You would absolutely love that book.
But we actually had to have an inventory of places, people, and I felt it a little bit over the top. But everybody that saw, thank you for the inventory up front of people. Like, okay, you win. All right, I was wrong. Got it.
Yeah, I'm planning to do a big appendix and possibly a Dramatis Personae kind of section at the beginning as well for this book, because it is. I mean, even people have asked me about that in the past. I was like, "Who is this guy?" My longest novel is a space opera book, but kind of space opera, space fantasy. But that book has a lot of characters in it, and sometimes they'll disappear for 100 pages, because they're just not there. They're not around. We don't worry about them too much for 100 pages. And then they come back, especially the more powerful, the power players, the people who are like off stage but important, might only show up in person a couple times in the whole book.
When they do, it's a big boom.
Yes, exactly. Even if they are an old guy in a wheelchair who's been exiled to the frontier for some reason. I don't think he was in a wheelchair, but he was very old. Anyway, that was my favorite one of the side characters. It was this guy who just really wanted to go home back to his civilized, because he was exiled to this frontier, with a lot of his people. But he's he's 95 years old or something, and he's like, I just want to go home and see it one more time. But because his side lost the big war and the elders were in charge of the war, they all got sent away. They all get sent to this no, you lost. You can't go home and cause dissidents, right? But we're not going to kill you. We'll just send you away for good. But that was his whole motivation. I still remember that character very fondly for some reason. There were a bunch of characters like that in that book who were not very nice. They were kind of unpleasant, but I understood them. And then I got a real affinity for that. I enjoyed them for that reason,
So have you ever redeemed any of your characters? I mean, they're nasty, 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 and are they redeemable?
Oh, for sure. Some of them are pretty redeemable. I mean, but it's kind of funny. I guess it used to be more simple to me to redeem characters, right? Because, and this was like a long time ago. I could do a redemption arc with a character or a redemption side story. But now I feel like maybe it's my just kind of increased cynicism over the years. But I feel like that happens less and less with me. Like, I don't have a lot of characters that like turn over a new leaf and are good guys eventually, if they were actually like despicable to begin with. And that goes back as far as like 2014. So it's been 10 years or so of like this, where I'm like, okay, I look at that book, Origin of Storms, the longest book I ever wrote at this point. That's probably going to get surpassed by this new one. But Origin of Storms, there's this character, right, who's like he's the equivalent of like a CIA agent in that setting, but he did that because he wanted to shoot people, but he was never in the good enough shape to be a soldier. And that's like, so he was not very likable. I did not like this guy. I have an affinity for him now because he's just so unpleasant, but I could predict everything he was going to do. And like that, I could predict he was probably never going to have he was never going to be on good terms with the main character. So in that sense, he was never going to have a redemption arc. On the other hand, he doesn't, because he doesn't think he needs one, right? He's a normal guy in some ways. He's doing his job, but he's also a sadistic monster. Just happens to be.
Okay. We have some despicable folks that, they deserve to be whacked, and nobody sheds a tear. But there's some, I would call opportunistic people that are, like, I'm in it for the buck, and those are malleable in our universe of characters. Like, okay, she's been dealt a heavy hand. She's up, and now she's looking to be able to get on top and get the dues that she was robbed of, because she's looking for the payday. And then something happens to be able to change her outlook on life.
Yeah.
And those are the redeemable characteristics that we like, that you tease them out.
Yeah.
Because they're not quite there. They're not there during the discussion and the novel, but over books and a couple of times, and you bring her in, and all of a sudden, we actually had somebody comment, "How can you let this character live?" And by the whole book, she's like, "I just love her, man. She's so cool. She was redeemable. I love that, man. I love that." And so it was a storytelling technique that caught us by surprise. That they just, I don't think we did it deliberately. We just, but when the readers call it out, what a fun discussion.
That is great. That's that emergent quality, right, of writing, where you realize that you were doing something you didn't even really know you were doing at first, and then you can capitalize on it, right? What do you think about that? I mean, is that kind of how it works?
Exactly. And some characters are so deliciously evil.
Yes.
You bring them back because they're deliciously evil, and they keep doing evil, and all of a sudden they look into their mirror and go,
Dorian Gray.
Maybe I don't want to behave that way. Maybe I want to see something different.
Yeah, that's a really good. I mean,
we've all changed our mind. We've all made choices and go, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done that." Ooh.
No, that's definitely true. I guess what I mean when I say I'm kind of cynical now is not that I don't see characters. I don't see characters changing that much, right? I see them like it's not that they do, in wrestling it's called the heel face turn, where they start out as a bad guy and become a good guy. It's more like they always had that potential for me, and then they can either do it or not. And I don't always know which ones have the potential. So you're definitely right there that there's an emergent quality, right? Like what I mentioned before. That all makes sense and is very resonant with what you've been saying. I just kind of think that if there's certain characters, I'm like, how is that character ever going to want to redeem themselves? How are they ever going to want to change? And that's the important part. I mean,
exactly. That's a very important part.
Yeah.
Whether they can or whether they want. No different from people.
Yeah. And in fact, there is this one character actually in that same book because I wanted to make Origin of Storms a series, but that first book grew so long that I never got around to writing the second one. I'm still tinkering with ideas for it. But one of the characters is this. He's actually the chief of this agency, basically this regional agency that other guy I mentioned works for, right? That the sadistic guy, and he was pretty rigid and nasty. I mean, he was like against the main character a lot of the time because the main character, he was suspicious of her for a large portion of the book. But this guy went through the ringer in this book. He went through in the first book. He went through everything. He lost his hand. He got addicted to this new drug that he couldn't do anything about, but he had to do it. He actually got addicted for like a not kind of noble reason, hard to explain, sci-fi stuff, right? He had to take this drug to excess to do this thing that the plot needed done. But now he's addicted to it, and that means he's going to get canned when he goes home. That's the weird part. This guy's going to get fired because you can't have this compromised, messed up individual be the CIA chief, basically, of like a quarter of your land, your territory. So he's going to get fired and probably dismissed honorably or whatever. But come on, he lost his job. So I keep imagining that guy having like a spinoff where maybe he'll have a pseudo redemption, or at least go down a different path, right?
Yeah, some things you can't hide as a character. So if you have an addiction or you have something like that, you can't hide it from other people. So you have to either find an alternate path and figure out how you can beat the problem, or you keep going down the problem and find a way to make it work for you.
And in societal terms, that guy is the one who was like, he was on the straight and narrow. And then he kind of disintegrated, right? In the course of the first book, he had to keep bending the rules until they didn't work anymore, and he no longer followed them at all for certain parts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I thought that was a fun character, even though he's not even a point of view character in that book, which I think is refreshing too. When I think back on it, like, because I feel in the genres I write in predominantly, fantasy and especially high fantasy, epic fantasy. It's really a lot of people a lot of authors want to give the point of view to everybody, and that's not something you can physically do, right? You can't, like, it's just not materially reasonable to do that in a novel without making it, Brandon Sanderson 400,000 words long book or whatever. And even then, you only get snippets of every person.
Your readers will go ding 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 ding. They can't keep up.
Exactly. My friend Reinhardt, who's a really good author in his own right, he's written for Magic the Gathering, stuff like that, as well as his own books. He recommended to me one time, because he also is some MFA or something in creative writing. I forget what his degree is precisely, but he mentioned to me one time this really helped me make my books better a while ago. So this is kind of the writing advice for the episode trademark. Here we go. The writing advice for the episode comes from Reinhardt, which is to say, don't bounce around. It's the opposite. Especially when you're starting the book, give a few chapters with each character. Most people can't pull off the George R. R. Martin. We have 3 different points of view in 3 different chapters opening of a book. That's almost impossible, right? I in a weird way, like, it's something that people say. You look at it, and it's like, that looks easy, and you're immediately thrown off a cliff by like Sir Robin and the Holy Grail. By just because you thought you could do it, and it was like way harder than it looked.
Yeah, and it bites you if you do it wrong. It just bites you.
Yeah.
So, but it's very hard not to want to do different points of view, because you want to get their emotions, you want to get their commitment to whatever their character is, and sometimes that's only told from their point of view.
Absolutely. That's true. It's just a matter of you have to choose what to leave on the cutting room floor sometimes, because maybe that's the murder your darlings thing that Stephen King, people are always quoting Stephen King as saying, right? You got to be able to take the thing you like the best and get rid of it. I think is what some editor says. I think that's crazy. Personally, that take the thing you like the best out of a story and throw it away. Silly. If the thing you like the best can be cut from a book, well, write a book about that instead, At least that's how I think about it. I don't know.
And that's what we've done across several of our books. Things that weren't appropriate for a given book. I mean, we've kept track of those things, and we bring them back some other time, in some other way.
Well, I mean, sometimes what we've done is there isn't room, or it's not appropriate to be able to put the backstory for this character into the book, and becomes a short story. And that it gives you that depth, and gives you that for the readers that need that satisfaction, where did this character come from? And more importantly, where'd they go? Okay, I'm done with them. Okay, so we might pick them up, after they left, and we cover their history. Or sometimes how they came into this world building that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Those are good. Those are very satisfying short stories that help bring that give that depth to. And we've had people that, what happened to those people? They're in this book. Oh wow. Okay, thank you. I'll talk later after I get it.
Right. Yeah, that reminds me. I just released a few days ago. I just released the collection, the omnibus edition for the first 5 books in this series. I don't have a 6th book out, which is my main flaw in this one series of mine. This is the longest series I've ever written, and they're short books. It's like 5 books, mostly novellas. And I'm so like, I'm at first, and I got bored of it. I'm like, I need to take a break, right? And now I'm like, I want to go back. And but the mistake I made at the end of that series was it looked like I killed off all the villains. I'm like, darn it, I was trying to get out too hard. So now I feel like I need to do something to convince, for at least a couple of them. I'm like, how do you come back from that? Well, maybe there's a way. We'll work that out, because it's fantasy again. I can roll with it. Somehow, to quote a really bad way of handling this, somehow Palpatine returned. Anyway, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one, the new Star Wars movies. So silly.
Okay. Star Wars is like, I think he can quote every single bit of Star Wars, so not a problem.
I do not neither. I have a high affinity for some of the lines, yeah. I mean, every time I get on a conference call, and it's like, okay, so-and-so is here, so-and-so is here, I always do the Red 5 standing by, okay? And that's how I get on the conference call.
Oh, wonderful. Also, Charles, I find your lack of faith disturbing, but everyone knows that one. That's not a difficult one. I think the names are sometimes the funniest thing to remember from Star Wars. But anyway, we were having a great discussion about writing, and I had to ruin it with that awful new episode line. No, I didn't ruin it. I just derail it anyway. But I grew up with the original Star Wars trilogy, and I thought that was great. And then by the time I was like 10 when episode 1 came out, I thought, okay, and I was so disappointed, like immediately. And I think I didn't like Star Wars episode 1. Do you remember Star Wars episode? Oh, I don't know exactly. I guess I thought it was kind of cheesy. I don't know.
Which one are you talking about?
Episode 1 of Star Wars.
No,
the first of the prequels. The first of the prequel movies.
First of the prequel, okay. Phantom Menace, right?
Yeah, Phantom Menace. That's right.
Okay, that's yeah.
It's a tough sell. There are some great parts of it,
Yeah, I've been at book shows, and if you want to start an argument at the top of the lungs, just ask everyone, okay, which one of the Star Wars episodes is the best, and stand back. There's always somebody goes. And I watched some guy bristle, and I thought he was going to come to fisticuffs with somebody. It's like, oh no, it's the original number 1, not the new number 1.
Oh yeah, I still think the original episode 5 is still my favorite. Empire Strikes Back. That's still my favorite.
Yeah. It is, and I can still remember storming out of the movie theater saying, "He left a cliffhanger. I will kill him personally."
Well, that didn't work out. Obviously, he's still around. You're still around. So clearly, you had a change of heart.
Well, we put those kind of characters in our books, and that's where we whack them. Okay,
fantastic. Fantastic. Oh, okay. So George Lucas makes a cameo. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good to know. So, all Star Wars aside, though, except of course, I mean. Well, we'll see. Maybe we'll fall back into it. But I do think, I mean, I've talked to you a few times, Charles. I didn't realize you were such a Star Wars fan. But Rox, I'm curious about you. What kind of got you into writing? Because I've talked to Charles Solo, and I'm not, and I always ask people this kind of origin story question at some point.
So it's interesting. I actually started with poetry.
Okay.
I was one of these teen poets who had to put everything into poetry or write songs. And I did that for probably 4 or 5 years. And it was fun. It was fun until the point where someone in my little group of people passed away.
Ah.
And so I wrote the poem about the eulogy for this particular person. And that was kind of the last poetry I ever did. And I gave it to the young man's parents. And so it's like, okay, I have all those poems. That's fine, but I'm not going to do poems anymore. So then I started writing technical writing. And so the technical writing was all about, trying to make sure that I focused on, white papers and all of that kind of stuff. So
customer outcomes.
That's right, customer outcomes. So I actually got Charles involved in doing white paper writing at one point in time when we worked at the same company, but in different areas. And so we were doing, technical white papers. This is before we ever did fiction. And it was fun. We learned we could write together.
Yeah. Which is important, obviously, because your collaborations have gone far and wide since then.
They have, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. There's an affordance, right? The game design term is an affordance. When you realize you have a tool that you can use, right?
Right.
There's something you can. I bring this word up a lot because I love it, but also because that particular use of affordance, it's kind of the same way. It's like you have a team, you can do stuff with that team beyond what originally you formed to do, kind of thing. I think that's really cool.
It's kind of like a natural bending of a logic. Mm-hmm. You're bending it to work for what you want it to do, and it's really fun.
Well, it's a bending. I always think it's the time-space continuum, and going into warp drive and coming out the other side in a different part of the universe.
I think we went right back to Star Wars. Just
we
saying.
Did, but hang in there.
Stephen Hawking, come on, and Albert Einstein.
Okay.
Yeah, that's also the Tesseract. Either of you have you ever read? Was it A Wrinkle in Time? Have you ever read that book, Madeline L'Engle?
It's been a while, but yes.
Yeah, it's been a while for me as well. But that's such a fascinating universe depicted there. It's such a weird. That was a book that I read. I remember the audiobook as a kid, and I remember thinking, so this is a weird book. Even when I was like 12, maybe younger, I was like, this is a weird book. But I knew what a Tesseract was from a young age. I mean, my parents were physics professors, right? Both physics professors before I was born.
Both of them?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, my mom retired because they had a lot of kids. They're heavily Catholic and Presbyterian family, so we had a lot. I have 4 siblings, and I'm a twin. So.
Oh, you're a twin! Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, it is. That's the best response I've actually heard of me telling someone I'm a twin. Because congratulations, yeah, everyone should have a twin. It's the best. Anyway.
Twins in our new trilogy, the Enigma heirs, him and her, and they are opposite sides of the same coin.
Yeah,
mentally and emotionally.
I mean, it's kind of like that in real life with my twin brother and I. We're identical, but we are very different in personality. I think we sound the same. We look very similar, but he's just. I mean, we've gotten a little closer together over time, but originally it was like there were these big divergences, right? He'd go one way, I'd have to go the other way, and so we covered more ground that way. Maybe, I don't know.
So, do you still think for each other, or do you know what he's thinking? I guess is the right way to ask that.
Hard to say because he lives 2,000 miles away now, so I talk to him every day. So it's hard for me to say if I know what he's thinking because I don't actually hang out with him in person very much. We do frequently finish. I try to finish his sentences a lot, but I think that's a different thing. It's a little game that he hates, but and it's also just an issue with me being autistic. And I'm autistic, but he's, I guess, supposed to be neurotypical. It's hard to say, right? It's this weird situation where he was never diagnosed, but he probably has a little bit of autism. My autism is very mild. So it's a toss up really. Is mine so mild that being a little more mild means you're not autistic? Maybe. Anyway, it's all just
I think
categories at that
you're
point.
an individual. You're just a great individual.
Well, thank you. And yeah, that's how I tend to think of it now. But when I was a kid, it was a lot harder, right? I mean, I went through autistic psychosis when I was a teenager. Which is a term I kind of came up with because it's like a paranoia that comes from not being able to understand why people are mad at you. And that's something I was always dealing with before I got medicated for it. So that's probably why my twin brother and I diverged so much, because I guess he tackled it with becoming healthier, right? Physically healthier. He got into sports and stuff in his later high school and college time. And then I never did that. Instead, I just sat and wrote in a cave in Minnesota for a bunch of time. But a cave, a very nice cave. It's called a basement, I guess. But it's the difference is that he got into this place where he was more normal than me for a long time, but now we've kind of got closed the gap again, I think. I say more normal, but it just means like he had more ordinary preferences. He had more friends, stuff like that. Instead of having a few really committed friends, he had more people that he would talk to and stuff like that. But he's also more of an introvert than me, which is very strange. That's the combo that's to this day that's become very consistent. He likes to have more time to himself even than I do. And I love talking to people, as you probably figured out. But yeah, I love talking to people, all sorts of people, but especially people who write. And yet he's like, no, I had my social time for the day. I'm going home. I'm going to sit in the dark or whatever. just relax and be alone. Do something fun by himself,
So what do you guys do together that you really, really enjoy?
We play war games and RPGs. We grew up with RPGs, D&D, that kind of thing, and Warhammer and that kind of stuff. I mean, the thing I really like talking to him though. That's my favorite thing to do. And he gets bored of that. But we play games together mostly. That's how we can relate and have time to understand each other, And I mean, meet in the middle again, Anyway.
Oh, fun!
That's good.
How often do you actually get to be together in the same place?
Like maybe about a month out of the year total. 2 weeks here and there. Like that's one of the reasons I pre-record a lot for Christmas. Is because he comes to town. He comes back home for Christmas, and I'm where we grew up. So it's easy for me to, and so it's like, okay, I'm not, clear my schedule. My best friend's going to be in town kind of thing.
There you go. So where are you guys in the pecking order of your two other siblings?
Oh, we're the youngest. We're the youngest sons. So we have two older brothers, and then we have a younger sister. Yeah.
Oh, so there's actually 5 of you in the.
There's 5 of us, but there were 4 deliveries, shall we say? Yes.
Of course. Okay.
But one was extra, and that was silly because. But I mean, and the other thing is, I have a cesarean section, so it's very weird. Like we have a very, very different way of being. I thought I was always the youngest because my twin brother's an hour older than me. So, yeah.
Right. And then you have one sister, and she's spoiled rotten, right? And you all beat up everybody.
A little bit, yeah. My mom finally got the girl 8 years after me, so she's definitely a good. She definitely had the run of the place in some sense at that point.
And you all protect her.
I mean, it's more complicated than that, but yeah, we get along now.
Nice.
Anyway, but I do like the family thing. Actually, does remind me, and we can get back to writing now instead of just going over my weird genealogy and my interesting, bizarre family, which actually is pretty fun. I love my family, but a fictional family is also an interesting thing. That I mean, have you written anything like that? Have you written I'm kind of getting interested in doing family saga stuff, but also, of course, in a fantasy setting or sci-fi setting, because I'm not going to leave my binky behind, just to write something about family, But I love the idea of delving into that kind of territory, right? The big complicated familial relationships, that kind of thing.
So in our thriller series, we actually have a family that started out with 3 young men that weren't physically related or genetically related, but they had a same, central cause that they were related. But the ongoing generations are of these people.
Okay.
And that's where we get our twins and some other things. But because of that, you have similar values. And so that's part of the moral high code that we have within our good guys or our heroes.
Yeah.
They have the same moral high ground. They have the same underlying beliefs of how you should be from a good versus evil kind of thing. And so we've explored that quite a bit. Not quite a genetic family bond, but, sometimes it doesn't have to be genetic to be very tight.
Well,
that's really cool.
The stories with the the three guys that get back at the Germans by stealing the Enigma machine in 1939 and give it to the Allies. Okay, that's the collision, if you will, of their moral beliefs fighting the bad guys, and they pass those thoughts and those feelings on to the next generation and the next generation, and that's those are little threads that are pulled forward during the time when they're like, this is a really hard problem, and two of the people are arguing, and we get to examine how they grow, how they interact. Not everybody's going to say, yeah, we're all on board with this. It's like, no, this is wrong, and here's why. And it's like, oh, okay. And so you get that real dynamics that you see in families where you don't get everybody going, yeah, we're all on board with this. Fine.
Yeah, you're not all going to be you might be on the same team, but you're not on the same wavelength all the time.
That's right. And then, of course, because we do techno thrillers, then we add in the artificial intelligence element, which is, that's a whole nother dimension, as opposed to, I have no feelings, right? I'm a machine. I really don't have feelings.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because, to go back to something my twin brother told me, he has this theory about 2001: A Space Odyssey. Familiar with this movie? Yeah, of course. The Kubrick movie. The movie specifically, though, wherein he has this thought, because my brother is really into learning about art. He really loves the idea of an artificial intelligence, of creating something like that. He's a good deal more technically gifted than me. So he works on that kind of thing sometimes. But the programming side, he's like, he would say, I don't want to say too much about it, but he pointed out that how the AI in 2001 is just about as human as any of the people in the movie. He's trying to cover up his mistakes, and then he does something even worse to cover up the fact that he made one little mistake, and that it's this fascinating folly of humans. He acts more like a person, and he's portrayed more as a person than most of the humans in that movie. In fact, any of the human characters, really. Yeah, because that was Kubrick's point, right? He was trying to say, at least I think it makes sense. The humans are all interchangeable in 2001. I took a film class that covered this back in college, and it was really interesting. The human, like the two astronauts or whatever who survived the initial shutdown of the life support, those two guys, I don't know which one was which. One of them lived, one of them died, but which one was which, I couldn't tell you.
But Hal continued.
Yeah. And the thing is, it was this selfish drive, because Hal wanted to be the one to go through the Stargate and experience Nirvana or whatever, right? But so it's just a human rivalry. It might as well be the guy from the Belloc from Indiana Jones in the Holy Grail, or no, the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
My bad.
No, we get into that discussion with our artificial intelligence enhanced supercomputer that helps run with the R group, because it's an interesting exercise of when the computer starts referring to himself as I, and the guy that's programmed him kind of wigs out, and then the computer says, "Teach me humor. I don't understand it." And that was kind of a fun exercise because humor is not something you can actually understand as a machine.
Yeah.
If you think about it, because it doesn't fit into all of the ages. Something that was funny 5 years ago isn't funny now. if it's male or female oriented, or if it's political, or there's a thousand. It's relevant at that point in time, and trying to explain that to a computer.
Yeah, timing is something computers probably would understand,
Correct.
but you combine it with timing and subject, and that might be even more, that prove difficult, I'd imagine.
Exactly, and it's the feelings. They don't have right and wrong. They don't have feelings. They can tell you something was bad according to some other document, or some other source, but they would never feel they did something wrong because they have no feelings. They have no heart.
Yeah.
So the exercise for us is how does the human beings, to your example of 2001: Space Odyssey, how do the computers interact with the human beings, and where are the guardrails? We always exercise that discussion, and so it's very important in our world, in the high tech world,
and probably more prevalent today than even when we started writing the series, because we've given a lot more freedom to machine learning and a lot more power. And the question is, does that help us or hurt us?
Right. I think a lot of people are considering the side that it might be hurting everybody. Giving more power to machines in the real world seems to be, or to machine intelligence to attempting to develop artificial technologies doesn't appear to be that effective yet. I mean, maybe that's the nascence of it, right? Is that the things we're using it for now feel like they're parlor tricks and potentially dangerous because of how wasteful they can be. But it depends, right? It depends what people think about their different the different perspectives on it, right? Yeah.
The thing is, there are some really valuable things like helping review documentation on someone's ailment and helping to identify where to look and what the logical choice would be. They can be AI can be extremely valuable from that perspective. Giving tools to individuals so they can be more efficient and more productive, it's awesome for that. I kind of personally have an issue and draw the line where it's making decisions for me without my approval. And that's where I kind of, maybe I'm just too independent because I want to make my own choices to a degree.
Yeah.
And I feel that I have earned the right to make my choices. And I don't want the machine deciding for me.
Yeah, I'm getting tired of the AI search engine thing. That's, I suppose in the real world, that's the part where I kind of draw the line. I'm like, I thought search engines were great before, and now they're turning terrible, right? Like search engines made so much sense before, and now they're just kind of like there's all this random garbage being thrown into them, or there's these AI like summaries of the information that may or may not be true at the beginning. You just have to skip them. It's just a waste of energy to generate these.
I like the term they use for AI. Misinformation is called hallucinations. That just cracks me up.
Yes.
Wow. Whoever came up with that one, they nailed it.
Yep. But I think it's back to the guardrails. I want you to take a discussion that's going on right now. I want you to give me a summary.
Yeah, that's
okay. Here's a summary of what people said. That's valuable. Mm-hmm. But then if you take it and you go out and research everything on the internet and give me a summary, you got nothing but trash.
Absolutely, yeah. Like the chat bots that became Nazis or started professing Nazi beliefs after several days, or even like in the primitive before we had this recent AI craze, there was this primitive. I think it was a Google chatbot that started talking about God and stuff. It was very weird. It was like
it was Microsoft.
Microsoft. Thank you. And it's the truth is you're not a believer in God Almighty. I'm like, what are you talking about, robot? Do you know anything? What do you know that we don't? The fact is not anything, because that was just a chat bot, right? It was just kind of putting words together. Not like an artificial intelligence can do in fiction, or even better, or semi do now.
Yeah, and then you have young people who haven't learned how to do their own research and how to actually get, good information and be able to weigh good from bad and do that alignment. If they don't have a chance to develop that skill, then I think they're much more Vulnerable. That's a great term. Thank you.
Yeah.
To not
lacking of lack of clarity, right? A lack of a direction of an analytical ability to tell what's real and what's insane and doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we definitely strayed into an interesting conversation here with the AI, but it makes sense, especially given the sort of stuff you write. I mean, I find it interesting, though, that, I mean, I'm not exactly an AI doomer, right? I don't believe in AI but I also don't believe that a strong AI, as they call it, is likely to happen anytime soon, right? So the people who are like, but who knows? Who knows? Could be wrong about that. I definitely have AI in some of my sci-fi stories that are kind of off the chain. I mean, the one of them in particular in the Origin of Storms is kind of it's an AI ruler, so it's in charge of a whole human colony. Yeah. But is that because, for various reasons, that there's naturally occurring computer technology in the Pillar universe where that story is set? And so that thing has access to effectively an infinite-sized supercomputer. It's the only thing limiting it is the distance that the information actually has to travel, which eventually becomes prohibitive. But that distance is vast, so it has all the processing power you could ever want, kind of thing. Yeah.
I think it's more of what we will allow and accept.
Yeah.
And so it's are we going to allow this, or are we going to say, nah, maybe not?
Yeah, there definitely needs to be some intervention in that regard, some human, critical thinking, ability to distinguish what we should have and what we don't want to have at all.
From a dystopian point of view, and you've got some talent in that area. Mm-hmm. You ever get a chance to see a movie called Colossus, the Forbin Project?
I've never seen it. That sounds interesting, though.
You would probably want to go hide under your bed after our discussion for AI, because it is so close to reality that it's frightening.
That's scary. I'm just imagining what this is about now. Is like, oh, okay, maybe it's time I get this computer out, turn this computer off, and chop it up with an axe. No, I'm just kidding. No way, not this computer. This is my writing machine too. Can't do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it serves you, not the other way around.
Exactly. Yeah, fantastic example, right? Charles Breakfield, Rox Burkey. It's been almost a whole hour, so I think it's time. You guys remind us of the books you have out, the series you have out, because you've been prolific together. You've created a lot of books, and and then we have to get out of here because I'm turning into a pumpkin as we speak.
I hate for you to turn into a pumpkin, but I can relate to it. It's very cold where you are.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, the Enigma series is our 12-book series. It does introduce the R group. It is the cyber good guys versus the cyber thugs. And it does also talk about the evolution of our supercomputer, who is very AI-based. We capped that series at 12 books because I didn't want a 13. Superstition with me.
That's wonderful.
But we did go to a next generation, and that next generation is Enigma Heirs, and that's a 3-book trilogy, which the next one, Enigma Jewels, is coming out in 2025. Probably the March timeframe.
Okay, cool. So not that far away. Wonderful.
No, it's very close. And we look for beta readers all the time. Those are all available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook by the voice of Enigma series, which is what we are. Enigmaseries.com is our website. Derek Scholes is amazing. He is an amazing narrator, voice actor. And finalist talent, winner talent of his voice. He's stunning.
Yeah, we just got an example of the win from our latest book, The Enigma Forced, where he scored high on the young adults and the top pick for audiobooks. So,
cool.
Yeah, we're very proud of the work he does.
Fantastic.
And then we talked earlier about backstories. So we put together a small contemporary women's short story collection called Trusted Friends and Lovers. It talks about the concept of trust and it brings in some of our old character backstories and whether or not they had trust, they had relationships, and it's relationships that are, friends, relationships that are married couples, relationships that are wanting to be married couples. It talks about trust. And so Trusted Friends and Lovers is available. Perfect gift for, your better half, your other half for Christmas time, kind of fun. And then our most recent one that we're kind of proud of is The Dream. And The Dream is for what I call the tweenies from 8 to 14. It's about hope. It's about imagination and comprehension. It has a lot of games in it and coloring for kids. Fun stuff.
Wow. Okay. So it's kind of activity meets story. Is that it? Or?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the kind of book that I wished I had when I was reading to my girls when they were growing up, because it has life stories. It's got things that I want them to consider. Follow your dream. That's the main theme, because there's stumbling blocks all the way along, and those are the things that you need to overcome. So it's a life lesson for somebody reading to a young child. Perhaps it would help them realize don't let those dreams be put aside that you had as well.
Absolutely.
And then we have our cozy mystery. So we joined up with 12 other authors. We created this wonderful town called Magnolia Bluff. It's in the middle of the Texas Hill Country, and it's amazing. I mean, Tim, seriously, people are dying to get into this town. So we have 12 authors. Each of us release a book during a month of the year. We released our third book because the series has been going for 3 years.
Wow.
Called Enigma. Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
Ransom Enigma.
The Ransom Enigma. And boy, it's amazing. And so we got lots of fun.
You do. You have quite a lot of books out there, especially, and a lot of connections that can lead to other books for people. So, I mean, Magnolia. Yeah. So thank you so much for being on. This has been a lot of fun. And thank you so much once again. Also, people should check out my new, it's not new so much, but the full collection of the first 5 Iron Dragon stories called Your Color is Red. It's out now. It's a complete collection. You can get it in hardcover, but and the audiobook is potentially in the offing. It might be a while because I still have yet to find a narrator, but I'm starting to look. So
okay, you're going to love Derek. We'll introduce you because he's amazing.
Okay, I mean that sounds incredible.
Some of the other books he's done, he's
amazing.
Yeah, we are out of time, Charles. But at least for the actual recording now, maybe we talk a little bit off mic. But thank you so much, everybody, for listening. You can find my books on timneedawriter.com. That's spelled need a writer, right? Not like my actual last name is spelled, because my last name's hard to spell. It's got silent letters and all that garbage. So thanks for listening, everybody. Happy holidays, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.